Building the next meta framework for Angular with Analog. That's a lot of words, but that's the title we're rolling with. So let's go with that. Hi, there's my face again. My name is Brandon Roberts. You can follow me on Twitter /X at Brandon T. Roberts. I tweet out gifs. I talk about sports. I block people sometimes. We have fun there, so you can follow me there. You can also find me on YouTube, ranting about Angular or experimenting with stuff like Analog. So yeah, you can also subscribe to the channel there. I'm the creator of Analog.js, which is a passion project of mine that I've fortunate to work on for a while. Also a maintainer on the NGRX project. Gave keynote earlier. Hopefully you enjoyed that also. Also Angular GDE and NX Champion. And I just like to say that those are things that just mean I've been involved in the community for a while and been able to do some cool things there. And look forward to helping the community out more and building things alongside you all. Work things. I'm also the engineering lead at OpenSauce, where we build insights and analytics for open source projects. And you can check out us there at opensauce.pizza. Nice domain name also. So for the agenda, I want to talk about Vite and how it's impacted the ecosystem, and we'll talk about Analog, of course. And we're going to talk about contributing for those who want to get involved in the project. So first, we'll talk about Vite. And as I mentioned before, Vite has taken the web landscape by storm. There's been like a mass shift in adoption to Vite across different ecosystems. Even ecosystems like Remix have just recently moved over to Vite. And Angular has been in this space for a while, and then we're traditionally off out doing our own thing, but we wanted in on some of that too. So with Analog came along, we kind of leaned into Vite, leaned into its strengths, and built on top of that. And even Angular itself has come along and added some integration with Vite also. And if you haven't, maybe this is the first time you're seeing Analog before, but we did reach a 1.0, so I was super excited about that. And we've also actually gone past the 1.0 and are continuing to release new versions there. So the biggest question is, we got to 1.0, we're still building features. How did we get here? And I can honestly say in one word that a lot of people ask me, why does this project exist? Why are we building this thing? And I tell them, I have one word for them, and it's spite. I was wanting to build this project because Angular has traditionally been, like I said, off, sometimes not having access to other ecosystems and other things like that. But wanted to build this project to extend Angular into other places. And we do that in a few ways. So Analog is there. Of course, we're built on top of Angular. We also use Vite, of course. And there's some other things here that I'll mention during this talk, like Nitro and also NX, because all these things play into how we got here today and kind of where we are moving forward in supporting Angular in this way. So first we'll talk about some of the things that have impacted Analog along the way that have, and in Angular, that have enabled Analog to be where it is. So some of the building blocks that have been introduced in recent versions of Angular, including standalone components, which we were traditionally using ng modules, but we moved to a way that you can define these components separately. Even the new ES-build support was an early unlock for Analog, along with other things that have come along like ESM, even though it's had its share of friction in the ecosystem, has enabled us to do more things like this today. Even improvements in Angular itself. The SSR story is definitely getting better in Angular, and we're continuing to build on top of some of those ideas and concepts there. So how do we make this continue to work? So the big foundational piece of Analog is a Vite plugin for Angular. And this does some things like this connects the Angular compilation to like the way Vite does building and serving of your application. So it kind of blends those two worlds together. And this also allows other features that we can take advantage of, like dynamic imports. We can do things like handle markdown files. File system-based routing is a big feature of Meta frameworks these days. We also use these things for markdown plugins where we can render content effortlessly and things like that. So all these things kind of contribute to where Analog is going. There's also Nitro, and Nitro is a server toolkit that was originated out of the UnJS org, which is a set of tools that you can use that are like framework agnostic, that allow a lot of this functionality on the server side in Analog. And even the Angular team is recently said they were going to look into possibility of using Nitro also. But it enables things like pre-rendering, multiple support for deployment targets, API routes, extensibility, and even further than that. So Nitro is a very, like I said, extensible tool that you can use in general, and it has proven to be very flexible in that way. Also NX. How many people, right by raise of hand, how many people in here are using NX in their projects? Okay, so a good number we're in good company here. Of course, NX has a lot of things that we take advantage of in Analog, such as generators for generating applications, whether it be new applications or integrating with NX workspaces, even generating page routes, or even executors. So there's a lot of infrastructure that you need for just building a project like this, for even just supporting things like running Vite, running the Vite natively, and even running tools like Vitest, and supporting things like automated migrations, or even presets for generating new NX workspaces with Analog already installed. So when we talk about meta frameworks, there are a few features that are common between them, and Analog is no different here. We talked about file system-based routing, and I'll talk about how these kind of fit into Analog and where we are today. File system-based routing, server-side rendering, static site generation, all these things, API routes, kind of round out a full stack experience within Analog. And even things such as server-only data fetching is something that we can do there. So for the file system-based router, if you've seen this kind of convention before, it's very familiar in other ecosystems where you have these files and folders that you can define to declare different types of routes. Now all this is built on top of the Angular router, so you're still using the same router under the hood, but it's configuring these things based on how you organize these areas. So if you have static routes, dynamic routes, or even you can group these routes together, or even catch-all routes. And this is just an example of some of the different combinations here. You can build layouts with these, or like I said, catch-all routes, and all those routes are supported like you would configure them in the Angular router. There's also server-side rendering. Analog is really big about letting you build content-focused sites and still remain within the stack that you use. So you can still, even if you're using Analog, you still use commands like ngserve, but SSR is enabled by default in Analog. So you get that server-side experience right out of the box. And like I mentioned, as far as supporting different deployment targets, whether it be node-based environments or even non-node-based environments, those are supported there. So if you talk about different deployment providers, such as Firebase or Netlify, Vercel, Cloudflare, which is one of those non-node environments that they have support for, or even a long list of other providers that are supported that we can deploy these full-stack applications to. For static site generation, use ngBuild. You can define the pages that you want to pre-build Here, like I said, if you're building a blog or a content site that's in addition to your application, you can define those routes for pre-rendering there. And you can do this dynamically or statically. If you want to go fetch this list of routes, from a CMS and you want to build on top of that, that's something you can do also. So here I'm just, like I said, pre-rendering a few routes here. And also if you want to pull all the routes, pull all the pages from a directory, content directory, and render those, that's available too. So API routes. Popular frameworks like Express or even Nest.js give you, API endpoints that you can hook into where you maybe have to proxy to them. But you can build these API routes and build this API right into your application with Analog. So this is just an example of the server routes where we have a products.ts file there, and you end up with an /API/products there that's just built in. And this also uses the file system-based syntax also for defining these API routes. So you can use these for server-side data. You can put environment variables here, and you can, like I said, configure those. And this is all just run on the server like a normal API would be. To go along with API routes, we also have server-side data fetching. So here, just showing an example of, we have our page routes. That would just be, like a page that you want to load, and we have an index.server.ts file that goes alongside the page route. So you can define these page endpoints that fetch this data only on the server and transfer it to the client, and even underneath integrates with HTTP client and transfer state, so you're not making that request again once you hydrate the application on the client. So to show an example of this, we have this load function that you can define in the index.server.ts file. So you can accept these different parameters, whether they be the parameters that were passed along with the page. Even if it's a dynamic route, those are supported also. And you can fetch some data, and that data will be serialized and passed to your application on the client side. Then on the client side, we have this this load function here that we're actually importing from the .server file, so you can consume this. This is just for type information. So you can import the load function from the index server file and use the inject load function to get that data from the server side request. But like I said, all type safe, and none of this server side data leaks into your bundle. So you can use this. It's given to you as an observable, but you can also convert this to a signal and use it just like you would any other thing. And this also works with component input bindings with Angular Router, or just traditional inputs, or even the newer signal inputs. So that's where we are with the kind of the feature set of Analog today. So the big question is, we always ask this question is, what's next? Where are we going? We've kind of built up this meta framework. Where are we want to continue to go? And the big answer to that is, we still want to expand into different ecosystems. Keep pushing Angular forward with these features and continue to build out this meta framework. So of course we have Angular and we have Vite there. And with Angular and Analog together, that gives us access to a lot of the Vite ecosystem that we can use, that we can expand, like I said, these tools and things that we want to use there. So tools like Vitest or even Storybook. The Vite plugin allows us to use Angular in these other different areas. If you want to use Angular components within Astro or even Quick, this unlocks so many different areas we could use that with. Another thing that's coming along is integration with Playwright, which Playwright has introduced component testing for many different other ecosystems, but there's been a large effort by Younes and some other contributors there to make first-party Playwright support for component testing, so we can use that with Angular also. So I mentioned tools like Vitest. And Vitest is a testing framework built on top of Vite. It has a Jest compatible API. So I know that we've talked, or in the community, we talked about like Jest being the tool that we're kind of moving towards, and then Vitess has come along and built a much nicer experience that's compatible with Jest that we can use there. It also has support for snapshot tests and browser tests. But the good thing is you don't necessarily have to use all of Analog to be able to use Vitess. So you can use this with existing Angular applications as a standalone install, and it also has other features there. But that's just one of the things that Vitess, some of the features that Vitess has. So if you want to try this out, install Vitess on your own projects, you can install the analog.js/platform, and there's a generator or schematic you can run against the project that'll set it up that you can run it and test it out and see if it works there. And if you're using Jest specific APIs, there may be some additional things that you may want to tweak there, but for the most part, it's relatively trivial. Also, Playwright, as I mentioned, EDE testing framework has support for component testing. We're able to integrate in Angular components through the Playwright component testing setup and the Vite plugin, because that's what they use to set up the environment for that. And so those are some of the areas that we're looking into. There are many other things that we could do to integrate Angular or Analog further, things such as forms integration. Maybe we hook into the server, or even server functions or things like that. But those are some of the things that we're looking at. But let's talk about the experimental parts. And this is kind of where some of you may have seen this, some of you may have not. But we're showing the traditional Angular component. It's class-based. It's what we're accustomed to. We'll continue to see this being iterated on in Angular. And we're looking at what would that look like from like a completely different point of view. And this is what we're calling the analog SFC. So if you want to define a template for an analog SFC, you use a template tag. It's has a .analog extension. We did have it named .ng at one point in time, but we ended up changing that. So we're moving forward with .analog. So define a template, you have a template tag. If you want to define some of the functionality that goes along with the template, you have a script tag. You can import your Angular symbols, import functions that you want to hook into your template. You put signals there, use dependency injection, all the same things you would do in Angular in slightly more concise authoring style. If you want to add some styles to your component, those will be in your single file component also. So you can define these styles in line and have that same experience there. So if you look at what the complete syntax here looks like for a single file, you can definitely define that there. But even if you wanted to define these as a separate template and styles, if that's your thing, you can also do that with SFCs also. So we have this define metadata, sort of a macro here that you can use to provide additional metadata for the component. As I mentioned, you can still use effect or view children, or even the newest Signal APIs here. Another thing that we're looking at is auto imports. So traditionally you would have to import these things and then add them to the imports of your component, but we're using this syntax for import attributes to be able to automatically import those components and be able to use them in your template. And this works even for things that are in Angular, the components and directives in the Angular framework itself. So IDE support. There's a VS Code extension that you can install that will give you nice syntax highlighting for these analog SFCs. If WebStorm is your tool of choice, you can use a plugin for that. Shout out to the couple people from JetBrains team, Peter and Jan Nicholas, for helping with that. And also we'll talk about contributing, because we wouldn't be here without the contributions from the community as well as the Angular team itself. So you can contribute to Analog in a few different ways, whether it be through GitHub issues, documentation, pull requests, or even if your company is going to use Analog and you want to sponsor it to help continue development there, all those things are much appreciated. And we have a few team members and collaborators. Robin, who has built Spartan UI. If you haven't checked that out, definitely check out Spartan UI. Marco, who's on the NGIRX team also, has contributed a ton to Analog, including the file system-based routing engine. And Luis has also contributed with translations and just general contribution to the project. And our team of collaborators, Chow, who's on the NG extension team, who has built out a bunch of things there that are amazing tools. Joshua Maroney has done a lot of awesome content about Angular and continues to do so. And Andres, who's helped out with translations also. So if we look at the community side of things, Analog itself has reached over 100 plus contributors to the project, which I'm super proud of. All of them are not listed here, but that just shows that there is momentum behind this project. We also hit 2,000 plus stars on GitHub. We got accepted into the first GitHub Accelerator, which kind of gives you a path to show how Analog could be taken even further through support in many different ways. You can also join the Discord community if you want just to come in. If you're trying it out or you're running into some issues, want to talk through some things, you can go to chat.analogjs.org to see that. And you can follow analogjs.org on Twitter/X to get more information there. And as I mentioned, supporting Analog, you can go to the website here to see just different ways you can support the project to keep building this meta framework. So to recap, we talked about Vite, kind of its impact on the ecosystem. We talked about Analog and the things that how we've gotten this far, what we're going to continue to build and push forward, and how you can contribute to Analog and help keep pushing Angular forward. I also want to give a quick shout out. So be sure that you stick around for the next talk from Natalia, who's going to talk about the Angular approach to SSR and hydration. Because some of these things build on top of what we're doing in collaboration with Analog also. With that, thanks.
Thank you very much, Brandon.